Welcome to Inside Independent Publishing with IBPA. I'm your host, Christopher Locke. I'm also the IBPA Director of Membership and Member Services. All right, so hybrid publishing is one of the more popular topics publishers ask IBPA about, especially publishers who are interested in possibly setting up their company as a hybrid publisher. So today on the show, we have Broad Book Group's co-founder, Dr. Jennifer Dorsey, to share details about how they form their hybrid publishing business, including how they get contracts set up with their authors, how they handle book distribution, how they decided what types of marketing services to offer, all kinds of stuff. So welcome, Dr. Dorsey. I'm very excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here because we do get a lot of those questions and people are actually confused still about what hybrid publishing is. It's been around for quite some time now, but there's still some, out there people are like, well, what exactly is it? So let's start where you as Broad Book Group, first, when did you all set up your company? But then also, were you a hybrid publisher from the beginning?
Sure. So we founded Broad Book Group in 2020 at the height of the pandemic, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best time to start a publishing company, but there's never a perfect time for anything. So we started then as a custom publishing company. And by that, I mean that we did independent book projects for people who wanted to hang on to their IP, who didn't really require or need traditional distribution. They were using their book as a calling card for perhaps a coaching business or, to folks who give masterminds and people like that. And so that's how we got started. We were pretty risk averse there in the beginning. And over time, we found that more and more of our authors wanted to be traditionally distributed. They wanted to be in bookstores. They wanted to be able to go into their independent bookstore and say, hey, look me up on iPage or wherever, wherever my books are distributed through. So we found that was a real need in the market, and we jumped right on that. And so over time, we started offering hybrid publishing contracts in which the authors would put some money into the project, and we were author and publisher partners with them. And so we do the majority of our projects that way now. We still do custom projects, but that I would say is our bread and butter.
Awesome. Okay. So it's interesting, you start out with one thing and then you make that transition based on what you're learning works for you all. So I want to talk about then what, all the details of, what you changed and how you run your company. I do want to give people kind of a baseline. So just now, how many generally books do you publish per year? And then also just kind of total how you've published so far?
Sure. So we shoot for 10 to 12 titles a year. We are very small, and so too many more than that, I think we'd be a little bit in the weeds. And we've been publishing that way for the last 3 years now, and we have about 25 books in print.
Okay, very cool. So, and I do want to note at the top, IBPA, because of all this confusion, we created what's called the IBPA Hybrid Publisher Criteria. So anybody can go to our website. It's under the Resources tab, and it's ibpa-online.org, and it kind of lays out some of the things we're going to be talking about here. Okay, so let's start with contracts. So contract for a hybrid publisher is going to be different from a trade publisher. So can you tell us, what are the differences that you all have for your authors that you now are your hybrid publisher authors?
Sure. So I think a lot of the boilerplate language is very similar or the same as you would find in a traditional publishing contract. So reps and warranties, termination clauses, things like that are going to be fairly close to, or if not the same. For us, what the difference in the contract piece is what each party is responsible for delivering to the other, and how the payments work for that. So, for example, we are we're very detailed in what the author is bringing to the table in terms of the content. Is it finished? Are they bringing a finished manuscript to the project for us? Are we offering any kind of ghostwriting services to go along with that? Maybe it's not coming in completely finished. So that's very strongly detailed. In addition, we are laying out what our deliverables as a publisher are. Now, traditional contracts do that too, but I think, at least for all the traditional publishers I've worked at before, sometimes it's not incredibly detailed because the publisher wants to be able to have the flexibility to say do the marketing the way they want to do it, or to provide the editorial in a way that they want to, because they are fronting the bill for the project. But for us, because the authors are bringing in not only the work, but they're bringing in some money, we feel like it's really important for us to be just as forthcoming with what we are providing as what they are providing. So we'll very much drill down into the granular details. You're getting this many rounds of developmental editing, this many rounds of copy editing. Your marketing plan looks like this. Here are the things that we are committing to for your marketing plan, whether that's an ads campaign or whether it's a social media content calendar. We have those bits and pieces very clearly outlined. And we don't include that in the boilerplate because every project is different, but we include that as a schedule that goes along with, it's like an ancillary document that goes along with the primary contract. And then likewise, we go into detail about how much money the author is putting into the project, what their payment schedule is to pay the publisher the money. And then also, because our hybrid contracts are set up so that they still get royalties, we then detail what their royalty payment system looks like.
Yeah. And just so everyone knows, in terms of like what a trade publisher gives for royalties versus a hybrid publisher, generally hybrid publishers, one of the points is that since you're as author, you're fronting some of the costs, the royalties will be higher with a hybrid publisher, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And, there are people out there that when it comes to the contracts, they're trying to find a lawyer. So can you give any advice about like where do they find a good lawyer who can help them with a publishing contract?
There are quite a few lawyers who specialize in publishing law. It's definitely a niche. And so I think that, if you're going out there looking for some representation, be sure that you're including that in your search for a lawyer. At the very least, you should have a contracts lawyer and not a generalist. But yeah, I think that because it's such an interesting and unique business, there are lots of pieces of publishing law that, not that they're not common knowledge among lawyers, but they may not be practiced by everybody who practices every kind of law, right? It's like anything else. So just be sure that you've got someone who A, is a contract lawyer, and B, if you can find them, has that publishing contract experience.
Very cool. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, I can't recall if there is a specific organization that governs that particular type of lawyer. But, I would at least start with someplace like maybe the Association of Author Representatives, which they're literary agents, but I believe that they connect you to lawyers as well.
Very cool. Yeah. And IBPA does have a list of lawyers that are part of our benefits of being a member who you can go to that do specialize in publishing law. So I wanted to ask then, now that we're talking about the authors, do you pay the authors pay up front and then they get royalties later? Like how do they handle payments to you all and all that stuff?
Sure. So, we're pretty flexible with how we work with our authors, again, because everyone's situation is different. We typically do a payment plan spread out over, the course of 3 to 4 payments. So we always have like a signing payment just to kick off the project. And then we have some payments tied to the other deliverables from us. So for example, once we get through like the developmental editing, that will be a milestone for our payment. And again, it's different per project, but we try to make sure that people aren't just giving us all their money at once. We don't want to do that. Yeah. That's not fair to the author. We want to be sure that we're building that relationship and building confidence in what we're producing for them. And so we never want to ask for all that money up front. We wouldn't feel right about that.
And one last question about authors. So in general, how are you finding your authors? Are they just coming to your website and finding you? Do you all do advertising? I mean, it's probably a mix of the things, but I'm just interested for our members' sake. Some of them are like, how do I get authors to want to work with me?
Sure. Well, I think it's important as a hybrid publisher that you are really clear about what kinds of books you do and what kinds of books you do not do. For us, we are nonfiction only. So if you're coming to me with your novel, I cannot help you. That's just not what we do because we can't be all things to all people. We want to dig in really well to our experience and what we're good at. And so, after having been in the business for 30 years, I've only worked in nonfiction and in some pretty specific categories like business, like personal growth, like performing arts. And so I think that, we dig into those niche communities to find our authors. Because keep in mind, too, this is not strictly self-publishing, right? It's hybrid publishing. So it's a partnership. Therefore, we still vet our authors to make sure that, it's a book idea and an author that we can sell in the general marketplace. So, we don't take everybody who comes in the door. You still have to send us a proposal. It still has to be a good fit for our company. The other thing that I do personally is I do a lot on LinkedIn because I work with a lot of business authors, a lot of entrepreneurship authors. That's a great place for me to reach out to folks and for them to find us. So, whatever niche that you are publishing in or whatever content areas you're publishing in, from a social media standpoint, think about what social media platform lends itself best to reaching that audience. So, if you do craft books or if you do art books, probably having a business presence on Pinterest and Instagram is a very smart thing for you to do. So I would definitely tie your outreach to what platform best fits your areas of expertise.
Awesome. Okay, so let's move to production. So as we discussed, one of the things is with the hybrid publisher, they're sharing with the cost of the production. So what types of services do you all offer? And then how did you decide those are the ones that you're going to offer?
Sure. So for hybrid authors, we obviously take you through the full book editing and publishing production experience. So we offer 3 rounds of editorial. We do developmental, copy edit, and proofreading. We work with an amazing designer and, in fact, a stable of amazing designers who will provide, cover concepts. We'll go through a couple of rounds to select a cover, interior page design. We do all of that. Work with an indexer who, for some of our more detailed nonfiction books, really do require an index. So we offer that as well. So it's really a full offering in the traditional sense that we take you through. You get all the traditional goodies, but with a hybrid backing. And then we also offer an authors, that was a mouthful, marketing service called Authors Resource, where, let's say that you have a book that's already come out, or, you need to build your author brand or platform a little bit. We have a separate marketing service that you can work with to do those kinds of things and not even be published through us to do those.
Yeah, I will absolutely be asking about the marketing. I'm interested in that. I know there are a lot of people out there who are thinking about creating a hybrid publishing company, and that's certainly one of the main aspects too. In terms of the production, are there particular services that are like the most popular? So is it maybe the book production, like the cover design, or is it the developmental editing? What do people tend to come to you the most for?
Well, if they're going to work with us, they're going to get that whole package. But I think what drives a lot of interest in working with a hybrid publisher is people don't want to be their own publishers necessarily. And so having a team in place that has an expertise in both of those areas, in the editorial and in the design aspect, is really important to them. They've got this idea, they want to do a book, they know how to market the book, but that's where it ends. And they're like, oh, I don't want to, vet a designer. I don't want to have to figure out on my own what a cover is supposed to look like, because there's a whole science to book covers. And I think people realize that is an area of expertise that they do not have, even if they're a wonderful subject matter expert at what they know how to do. They know they're not book experts. And so that's what really brings folks to us, just wanting a really strong editorial and production team in place.
Yeah, and I'm interested in the concept of, a trade publisher. They're the publisher in terms of like they're covering all the costs. So there's sometimes a little less back and forth, like work with the author in terms of, like something like the cover. Like sometimes, with a trade publisher, the author doesn't get to decide what the cover looks like, right? So I'm interested, what's your relationship like with each, aspect of the production, the developmental editing, copy editing, all that, book cover design, how you work with your authors versus how a trade publisher might work with their authors.
Sure. So I think the developmental editing is where that really starts, because there we're talking about bigger concepts. We're talking about the 30,000 foot view of what your book idea is going to look like. And so when I'm doing a dev edit with an author, we really are very much in partnership and try to be in alignment on making sure that their ideas are being presented in the best way possible for the reader. And so I always like to say, we all want the same thing at the end of the day. We're all on the same team here. We may have different ideas. If we have those different ideas, let's talk through it from an editorial perspective to get there, because our goal is always to make our authors look really good on paper. And so I think once they build that kind of trust with us and we build it with them, then it's very much a positive and productive atmosphere. And then when it comes to, as you mentioned, like selecting a cover, we don't just let people go nuts and say, here's what I want the cover to look like, and that's it. We really ask them to please trust us, please rely on our expertise. There's a lot of thought that goes into how a book cover is made, not only from a design aspect, but also from a sales aspect. So we take very seriously the comments from our sales team. If they tell us, hey, something's going to work in the marketplace or not, we trust them and believe them, and we relay that to the author, because truly, the author too wants what's best for their book so that it can sell well in the broader marketplace.
Awesome. And then, we've talked about the people working on the actual book. So I'm wondering how many of them are full-time employees versus contractors? And then how did you make that decision about, like not having, let's say, like 100 people that are actually full-time employees versus the contractors?
Sure. We're a very tight and small team. We have two principals, myself and my co-founder, Vanessa Campos, who runs the marketing side of the business. And then we have just a phenomenal stable of vendors who we rely on every day to do not only editorial, but to do design, as well as some outside marketing and PR for that marketing side of the business. So we like to call it a happy little pirate ship of just, a little bit of everybody. But I think that, again, I've worked in the business for almost 30 years and met amazing people along the way. And one of the most wonderful parts about doing this hybrid setup in this way with just awesome vendors whom we love is that we get to work with the people that we trust, know, and like to work with. And they all are amazing and have other clients as well. We're not the only, we're not the only fish in the sea for them either. But I think that we just do a really great job of offering to our authors someone who's going to fit well with them. So let's say, if I have an author who wants to do a coffee table book, one of our designers specializes in coffee table books. And so they can bring that very specialized expertise to the table. If I have someone coming in with a really niche-y business book, I've got some great editors who specialize in that type of editorial. So that gives us the flexibility. It allows us to be really nimble and give the author what they need.
And, a lot of publishers out there are looking for great people to work with. So how did you all find the people that you work with? And also then, how can, the other publishers out there find these types of really great people to work with?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, I've worked with all of these folks in a more corporate capacity in the past, and that's how I know their work and know it very well. But I think if you lean very heavily on resources like the IBPA, as an association, IBPA provides really great outreach so that you can help build up that stable of vendors. I think that's a really good place to start. Another great way to find and vet folks is to go through associations that specialize in that type of work. So, if you go through various, if you're a nonfiction person like myself, the AWP has a great resource list of editors that you can work with who specialize in nonfiction. So, looking out for those association contacts and connections is what I would do.
Great. And okay, so let's switch to distribution. So another big thing for a publisher versus like a service provider is that a publisher offers like actual full service distribution where they help get books into bookstores and they have like a sales team, as compared to just uploading someone's book to like Amazon or to Ingram Spark or something. So I'm wondering, how does your distribution work for your authors? And, at what point did you all set this up? So you have full service distribution. You didn't always have that probably. So how did that go? How did you land that?
Sure. So when we started out just doing the custom projects, we did mostly go through Ingram Spark. They were very limited distribution models, right? They were just like you would if you were self-publishing. We had prior connections with our current distributor. And so we made that outreach to them and said, I think we're ready. It's time for us to go a little bit bigger. We would like to get that type of distribution. So we worked really closely to get signed so that we could offer that. And now we do. For our custom projects, sometimes it still is more appropriate to set them up on Ingram Spark because they don't necessarily need a wide distribution. But for the majority of our books, we do offer that. And so we do full ebook distribution, audiobook distribution, as well as retail and physical.
And so how you just said, oh, we're ready for this type of distribution. So what does that mean? Like, how did you know you were ready? And then how did you prove to the distributor that you're ready?
I think once we started doing books that had more broad appeal as opposed to super niche business books, that's when we saw the opportunity there. When you're doing some more creative books like a coffee table book or like a beautiful 4-color book, those are books that you want to have print offset and warehouse so that you can get them into the physical hands of consumers at the point of sale. And so I think when we saw that we were really moving toward integrating more books like that into our content ecosystem, that's when we saw that opportunity.
Okay, very cool. And then one last question about distribution. So sometimes having actual traditional distribution is not a good fit for publishers. So I'm just wondering, can you give advice to publishers about like when you think it's a good fit for a publisher versus possibly not going that route?
Yeah. I think that having a really strong forecasting plan for your next 5 years is very important. Knowing that you are going to produce a certain number of books per year to keep feeding that funnel, to keep feeding that pipeline is really vital because always having a new book coming out is what's going to continue keeping you front of mind, not only for your sales team, but for the buyers. So, if you only are going to do a book or two a year, that's fine, but set that expectation so that, you don't fall out of their ecosystem, out of their brains. But I always like to have something on deck so that we're always there. Our sales team's always saying, here's another book from Broad Book Press. And oh, by the way, how are their other books doing? That way you're always in the conversation. So making sure that you have that concept and forecast of how many books are coming down the pipeline, that's important. I think the second thing that's really vital is to already have some kind of a backlist. And this is one thing that I wish we had done differently. We got our distribution super early, and I wish that we'd had more of a backlist already in place before we did, just because your backlist is in traditional distribution is going to account for about 70% of your sales over time, at least in the nonfiction space it is. And so, we got started early, and we haven't always had that backlist to kind of help us buffer through some rougher patches. And so I would suggest that, if you're really serious about getting bigger distribution, try to have at least 20 books in the can so far so that you've got that backlist already set up. So that's kind of that sales padding for you as you experiment and you try going with new content areas and all that stuff.
Awesome. Okay, so I wanted to ask about marketing. So there's, that's a really big part of the hybrid publishing world in terms of like what services you offer. So I'm interested, like, what were the types of services? Like, maybe it's changed over time. So what did you offer in the beginning? Why did you choose to do that? And then maybe how did you grow it? A lot of people would be interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely. We started out offering pretty traditional marketing plans, about a 2 to 3 month pre-order plan and calendar so that we were, helping authors drive their pre-sales, and then usually about a 3-month content calendar that came after the fact. Really traditionally focused on social media, email marketing lists, the things that we've all been doing for a really long time to market books. We continue to offer all of that, but I think now we've seen the winds change as they often do in our industry, and so we're driving more authors to put a little money and put a little thought into a more public relations approach. We're not big publishers, so we do not have a big PR budget. Our authors don't have a big PR budget, but learning how to do really smart grassroots PR has been something that we've really doubled down on. So, we work with some great PR folks who we outsource to, and they're always driving folks, obviously, toward podcasts, toward digging into your niche. Worrying less about the broad appeal, am I going to be in Oprah's book club, and more about, hey, what are the clubs, groups, organizations that really are into my topic that I can steer people toward? I think our focus has shifted from trying to have the broadest appeal you can to being a really strong micro influencer within your content area. And that's been a really good thing for us, because not everybody can be everything to all people when it comes to being a book author. There's so much noise out there. There's so much competition. So learning how to really hone in is what we have pivoted to for our authors. And it's really come with great success. So we're thrilled about that. And I think too, just having authors realize that having an ad campaign is important. Working in the Amazon ad space is important. Working in the bookshop ad space is important. So devoting some money and some effort to those kinds of efforts has been really big for us too.
So then, and you all handle, is it separate? So you would do maybe LinkedIn ads as a package, or whatever, Facebook or Google, whatever. Is that all separate, or maybe you do all those together? How does all that work?
If we're working with a hybrid client who's publishing through us, who's publishing through Broad Book Press, we include those elements within their marketing package. And we cater that to every author. So, again, you may have an author who does really cool books about sewing, and that's, they're probably not on LinkedIn that much, but maybe they're deep into, other social media platforms. So we tweak it based on where we think they're going to do the best. And then in addition, we also offer outside marketing services to authors whom we don't publish through our division called Authors Resource. So let's say that we have maybe an author contact who had a book, it came out last year. They want to do some refreshed marketing. They want to do some book birthday marketing or halo marketing that they're not doing currently with their existing publisher. We will create a special author platform package for them and work with them separately as well.
And in terms of a speaking engagement, if somebody's going to go do a talk, I know especially nonfiction authors, that can be a really, lucrative way to sell your book. So how does that work? Do you all land the speaking engagements for them, or just explain how somebody would set that up, through as a hybrid publisher with their authors?
Right. So we really rely on the author's expertise in their content area there. Getting the gig is on them. It really is, because they probably have better connections in that organization or field than we do. Our job in that case is to be a supportive capacity. So once the data is set, once they have a speaking engagement, we'll then take over and do the outreach in terms of making sure that there are books for back of room sales. Possibly making sure that the book is just purchased by the venue, which is always a better thing for our authors, because then they don't have to sit in the back and try to sell a book. Working with that venue or that organization to make sure that there's plenty of marketing around the event, that we're doing marketing, that we're making sure the author has the assets they need to properly market their appearance there, and making sure that the venue or organization has what they need from us. So really, once that data is set, that's when we kick in.
I see. And then that's an interesting topic of the expectation of what the publisher is going to offer versus what the author is expected to do for marketing. So I know you mentioned in your contract you have a lot of this laid out. So I'm just kind of generally for other publishers, how do you all differentiate between what you're going to do versus what the author you're expecting the author to do?
Right. Well, that really comes from some strong and deep conversations at the beginning of the process before we ever sign a contract. Like any other publisher, we want to see that book proposal. So we want to know what the author already has in place in terms of just marketing themselves in general. So that way we can take that as a jumping off point for building the book marketing plan. So what we offer is going to be really tied to what they bring to the table first. So as far as author expectations in the contract for marketing, we're going to say, you're going to give us your email list so that we can help you send out some emails. Possibly have, if you don't want to do your own social media posting, give us control of your account so that we can do it for you, or have one of our vendors do that for you. So really, it's the expectation that they're going to be a willing partner. And then on our end, likewise, we really like to be clear in what we are offering. So if we're going to offer them social media support, let's say what that looks like. It's going to be a 3-month content calendar that the author is going to post. We're going to build it for you, but you have to do the posting. Or if they want to be hands off, we'll build and post for you 3 months worth of content. So again, just very specific, making sure everyone knows what their expectations are.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And one last thing about marketing. So sometimes to get people's creative juices flowing, I'm just interested in the last few years, or, in general, your, experience before, a broad book group. I'm interested, do you have any unique things that you worked with authors on and for marketing ideas that you were like, wow, that went well. We didn't necessarily even think we would do that in the beginning, so that other publishers can go, oh, I hadn't thought of that kind of thing.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, one of the things that has worked best for our authors is to have some kind of a giveaway or a lead gen item to offer. Mm-hmm. So, and again, and this I think you could apply to fiction or nonfiction. So we often have a lot of things that end up on the cutting room floor for a book, a chapter that didn't quite flesh out, or a concept that was really cool, but maybe just didn't fit the narrative of what the book was, but is somehow adjacent. Having our authors have that little extra tidbit set aside has worked really, really well for them. So they'll use that as, we'll call it maybe like a bonus chapter or an additional workbook piece that comes along with a more how-to style book. Offering that as a lead generator so that folks will go out and buy the book has been huge. And that's something that you can do for little to no cost, with the exception of maybe having your designer put it together in a PDF or however you're going to sell it, or not sell it, but offer it. And so I think that, folks tend to think that they have to do something really outrageous and really big. And oftentimes it's just offering more value to the reader. And that's a really, really great way to do that. And it's been very successful for our authors.
Very cool. Okay, so I wanted to ask, before we finish, a few kind of general questions. So one is about hybrid publishing. I'm interested, so overall, like what have been kind of the more challenging aspects of, running a, hybrid publishing company versus maybe, having done a trade publishing company? And then, I'm sure you worked them out over time. So how did you resolve them?
Well, let's go back to our conversation a few minutes earlier about how much say the author gets in things like the book cover. To me, that is always one of the bigger challenges of being hybrid, because you do have to give a little and get a little back, right? And so just learning how to have those conversations in a different way so that we're still offering them the confidence and the peace of knowing that they're working with trusted, well-vetted folks, designers and editors, versus what they want, has just always been a challenge. And again, I go back to what I said earlier, like, let's make sure that we know that we're all on the same team. We all have the same goal. We want you to look good. We want your book to look good. So go back to that origin story of why we're all here. I think that's really important, but it is challenging. And we've had some tough conversations over the years. And I think that's a big difference. Whereas, as you mentioned, at a traditional house, you can be like, okay, well, thank you for your feedback, but we're putting $100,000 into your project, so we get to decide what your book cover looks like. Mm-hmm. So those, as I like to call them, come to Jesus moments, have definitely been challenging, but well worth it, because I think we have, for the most part, we've always landed in a place where everybody's pretty satisfied with the result, and it has benefited us in the long run.
So I wanted to see, because as a publisher in general, like right now, is there anything that you all are facing that, like, let's say the cost of printing or the cost of production, maybe, in terms of like distribution, like how difficult it might be to get your books into the market? Like, is there anything just right now, in this year, like that you all are like trying to overcome, and maybe you haven't solved it yet, but maybe at least other publishers can go, okay, at least I know they're also struggling with this?
Yeah, I think we're all struggling with costs right now. I mean, it's not going to get any better. The cost of paper is outrageous. The cost of production remains high. I think things have kind of leveled off after COVID. You know, things were very expensive then for good reason. I mean, there were just fewer people, you know, at the printers or in plants and being able to do the work. So I think it's better, but cost is always going to be the number one thing. And I think being able to be quick to market, which as a hybrid publisher is something that we can be very good at because we can be a little more nimble perhaps than a larger traditional house. But making sure that we find a happy medium between print time and quality and costs. Those three things are always swimming in our heads. And one of the things that we've done to overcome a lot of that is to offer, for lack of a better word, a hybrid approach to how we print books. So, if it's a book that has a lot of beautiful color, and I mean, obviously we're going to go offset with that. But we try to temper that with, okay, let's also make sure that the ebook is ready to rock and roll. Let's make sure that, we have a print on demand option set up, maybe to run it in paperback instead of hardcover if we need to. So we just try to have as many offerings from a production and printing standpoint on the table as we can, so that we can always stay in print one way or the other, and we can always offer something of quality.
Okay, cool. Well, this is a lot of really great information. I'm sure our members and all the publishers out there who are trying to figure out if this is a good fit for them, I think this is a great foundation to help them understand, if it is it, and thank you for being honest about some of the challenges as well. I appreciate that.
Sure.
So we definitely want everybody to check out Broad Book Group. It's BROADBOOKGROUP.com. Check it out. And also, I want to make sure that people check out the IBPA hybrid publisher criteria so that they can make a chance to make their own decisions about if it's a good fit for them. So it's under the resources tab. It's on the website, ibpa-online.org. And that's also the place, ideally, we want people to, become members. And there's many other benefits other than that one as well. So please check that out. Dr. Dorsey, congrats on all the success you've had, and it's exciting to learn your story. So thank you for sharing it today. And then also, we hope that people will subscribe to this podcast. So it drops the last Thursday of every month, and it's also on YouTube. Download anywhere you want. We very much appreciate you for listening. Dr. Dorsey, thanks also for being a member of IBPA. We appreciate it, and hope everyone has a fantastic day.